Today is January 4th, 2021, and the first day of my 28-day practice challenge. To start practice, I always make a cup of tea. And to begin today's practice, I'm going through my stretches to make sure I'm nice and warmed up so I can prevent any injuries. Yep, that's me being silly. Might as well if I'm recording this. Just so you know, I'm speeding things up in the video so you don't have to watch the entire amount of time that I practiced for. Just know that I don't do my stretches this fast. I am planning on making a video for each aspect of my practice, and I'm going to make a video on how I stretch and go in depth with all of that. After stretching, then I take my violin and my bow out of the case. During the break, which was about 2 weeks, I didn't practice at all. I wanted to give my muscles and tendons a chance to relax. This will give me more information about where I'm holding tension. And this year, I do want to practice playing with less tension, especially in my neck. So after I take out the bow, then I go ahead and rosin it. I rosin each time I practice, so I don't put too much on. And I'm cutting out some time here for the sake of the recording. Next, I get my violin ready by putting my sponge on. The sticky part is worn off on the back of this one, so I need to get a new one. For now, I'm just attaching it with a rubber band. Next up, I set my timer for 45 minutes. I practice in 45-minute units with a 15-minute break in between to make sure I'm not overdoing it. Practicing for hours and hours consecutively is really hard on your body, especially with repetitive motions. Doing so is a really good way to get an injury. Now it's time to get tuned up, so I take my tuner out of my drawer. I was not well prepared and I let my good camera battery die, so it's in the process of charging right now, and then tomorrow's video I'll use my good camera and good microphone for better sound. This is my iPad audio, which is okay but not great for this kind of recording. Now I'm finishing up my setup, so I'm taking out my metronome and all of my colored pencils so that I have everything I need for practice. Now I'm taking out my iPad so that I can use it for the drone and tuner, as well as to practice along to the recordings for my review pieces. Then I had to connect my Bluetooth speaker with the iPad because I use this Bluetooth speaker for other things, like when I'm washing dishes or making dinner, I can listen to something in the kitchen, and so I needed to pair them back up together again. What I'm doing now is setting up the drone for my tonalization practice. I use tonalization as a warm-up to get my violin warmed up and myself warmed up in the playing aspect, and then also to bring myself centered and focused so that I have a productive practice session. It's also the time that I practice gratitude, where I think about everybody that has made it possible for me to practice and to learn and to just play the violin, to teach, so all of my teachers, my family, my students, and that sort of thing. For some reason today, I really wanted to play B flat in my G major tonalization, so I went back and did a couple of repetitions. Finally got to play a B flat where it was supposed to go. Now I'm checking my practice journal to see what else I need to work on. Up next is review pieces, and in the month of January I'm focusing on book 1 pieces. I'm using my review pieces to practice my free neck. Here, I'm playing with just as much relaxation in the neck as possible. Now I'm playing with my head off of the violin. There shouldn't be any tension whatsoever since I'm not using it. If your neck is free, you should be able to rotate it and move it in all directions. So I'm going from side to side in this next variation. In the next variation, I'm just moving my head in all different directions. Next, I'm making sure that my head is balancing correctly, which relieves neck tension, and coming down on my violin correctly at the right point, the AO joint or the atlanto-occipital joint. I'm noticing some tension in my temporomandibular joint, my TMJ, and my jaw, so I release that by opening my mouth. In this last variation, I check to see if I can play with a relaxed and free neck while dropping my hand from the neck of the violin. In between items on the list, I try to make sure that I bend over so I can release all the tension in my upper body. If I don't start practice with my hair up, piled up on top of my head, then it happens at some point during my practice session. Next up, I'm working on some sight reading. These are the orchestral excerpts. I'm setting the timer for 1 minute to allow myself just 1 minute to look through the excerpt before I begin to play it. I'm also going to practice it with the metronome, and I chose 60 for this one, but there may have been a mistake. I should have actually gone a little bit faster than 60 for this excerpt. It was actually just easier for me to play through at the faster speed than the slower speed. Time's up, tea break, and then it's time to get into my sight reading. I'm double checking how many I have to play to stay on track. I'm trying to finish this book within the year. Right now it's a good time to practice sight reading and get acquainted with some of the symphonic repertoire that I haven't seen before. Rule number 1 in sight reading, you don't stop. But I decided to stop today, I guess. Now that I'm done going through it for the first time, I'm turning off the metronome and then going back to just go over a couple spots that I had issues and do a couple of reps. Up next, I'm working on some etudes, and in this book, I've played through some of the etudes, but I haven't done them all yet, especially the more difficult etudes, so I'm just going to start at the beginning and work my way through, and I'm going to touch on the ones I've already done, which I've done this one before, a vibrato etude. So I'm just starting with the first variation or etude, and then I'm going to work my way straight through the end of the book. The point of this etude is to make sure that the speed of the vibrato stays consistent. I practiced it in 3 different ways with fast, medium, and slow vibrato speeds. It's also meant as a duet for lightly row, so you'll see that I put this together a little bit later in my practice. Adding in the metronome to make sure I'm nice and consistent with my speed, my tempo, and my vibrato speed. I found it a little difficult to keep going from 3rd finger to 4th finger and have the vibrato continue even though I was changing the finger today. So I spent a little time on this etude reviewing that and trying to make it easy before I left this etude for today. So now I'm going to mark down in my practice journal that I have completed this etude. Next up is scale practice. I'm trying to get through the book 1 scales just for review. I review all the scales in all the Suzuki books first, and then I come back and pick up other scales not in the Suzuki books. This week is all about A major.
No, scale. Scale, etude, view, its neck, and
And the last segment of practice today is listening. I am going to learn the Philip Glass Violin Concerto 1, and I'm still at the listening point in my practice. I make myself listen to new pieces 30 times before I actually allow myself to play it. I keep track of how many times I've listened to it in my practice journal, and when I get to 30, or that box with a star, that's when I can actually start playing it. Last, I mark in my practice journal that I have practiced today. Alright guys, thanks for watching. That was my first day of my 28-day practice challenge. Bye!